Okay, this is where we left off uh, on the prerequisites for mass newspapers, which I'll just repeat. We had the penny press between 1833 and 1860, and what we needed were quick, cost efficient printing presses and a critical mass of literate customers. Then from there, also during this penny press period of time, it changed the basis of a paper's economic support. Whereas in the beginning of these newspapers, rich subscribers would subscribe, and that those subscriptions would be the revenue for the newspaper. But then they started to sell advertising space, and this replaced the subscriptions. I used to own a magazine, and we did both. But I can tell you right now that advertising does a whole lot more for your bottom line than does subscriptions. And then they changed the pattern of distribution. They used to mail subscriptions, but it started to cost a lot to mail them. So then they found some very poor kids on the street, and they would give the kids, if you were selling it for a penny, a kid can't make too much, but he makes a fraction of a penny per newspaper that he sells. So to make much of anything, he has to sell hundreds of newspapers. But in those days, if he could bring 25 cents home a week, or 35 cents home a week, that was going to buy somebody some food. So it was unfortunate. These children were very young. They delivered newspapers early in the morning, and some of them ended up not going to school. But it was it was just terrible, terrible kind of child labor that they did, because they figured we don't have to pay them much to do anything, so this is what we'll do. Saved the newspapers a lot of money, but they shouldn't be proud of it. And then it changed something else. It changed the way news was collected. So now we have professional reporting. So they're having to find people who can write, who can dig up the news and then write about the news. And then it also changed the content of the newspapers, from the concerns of the elite class to the affairs of the middle class. News becomes a commodity, and the fresher, the better. So you have to have a lot more people working for you to get things done faster. Sometimes a newspaper would have a morning edition and an evening edition, just to get more eyeballs on their paper. Um, and then eventually, around 1880, we're becoming big business. Newspapers are big business. The U.S. Census counted over 11,000 newspapers in America. At the turn of the 20th century, metropolitan newspapers sprouted throughout the country. And so the way the news was collected was, we've got professional reporting, and as I said, we're thinking now more about the masses of people, since the middle class and lower class could now afford to buy a paper for a penny. The Civil War and the telegraphic dispatch system changed the way stories were written. They heralded the start of the lead and inverted pyramid formats. Why does this happen? Well, oh gosh, especially during the Civil War, people were busy. People were very busy. The mothers who were not fighting had a lot to take care of. They had to take care of the farm, or they had to take care of the family business, also take care of the children, and possibly teach the children. So if you were going to pick up a newspaper, you didn't have much time. You wanted the facts, the juicy stuff right up front. And then you could get more and more details as it went in. So you had an inverted pyramid. This is a pyramid. You had a, how do I do this way? Okay, you had an inverted pyramid, meaning you had general stuff at the top and then get to the details down there. The US population doubled between 1870 and 1900, and circulations boasted an overall five-fold increase. That's just huge. Then we ended up with a period of time where we had yellow journalism. According to Britannica, what is this? What is the meaning of it? Where does it come from? It's the use of lurid features and sensationalized news in newspaper publishing to attract readers and increase circulation. The phrase was coined in the 1890s to describe the tactics employed in furious competition between two New York City newspapers, The World and The Journal. Often stories were partly or wholly fabricated for dramatic purposes, and the two people most notable for yellow journalism was Joseph Pulitzer, who ended up giving a prize in his name for excellent journalism, and William Randolph Hearst. He was also known for that. So, if you've heard this expression, if it bleeds, it leads. So the goriest, sexiest, most salacious stuff, that's what they were featuring. So they had eye-catching headlines, and the topics were different. So we have Joseph Pulitzer, who started his newspapers after, or really got them going in good shape after the Civil War. He started the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which is still around to this day, and the New York World. He was aiming that paper to a diverse New York City audience, particularly immigrants. And what did immigrants want to know about America when they came here? He stressed simple writing and generous use of pictures. That would make sense. If the person is an immigrant, chances are that person doesn't speak English fluently, but you can tell a huge story by a good photo. Emphasizes accuracy, introduces investigative reporting, increased ad space because the ads were paying for the newspaper, and the ad rates were based on circulation. Unfortunately, people who weren't the most ethical would lie about their circulation. They would say, well, we have a circulation of 250,000. And so people would pay for their advertising on the basis of how many sets of eyeballs saw their ad. Now you can get a whole lot more if you say we have 250,000 sets of eyeballs than if you're really selling only 100,000 sets of eyeballs. Sorry about all that noise. Now, reintroduce the penny press sensationalism into stories. Not the 1 cent price, but the style, the sensationalism, the headlines were so out there and fanciful. He endorsed the idea that papers should be advocates for the public good. Well, it's kind of funny to say we're going to show all this gore and sleaze and sex, but our newspaper really is for the public good. And like I said, Pulitzer self-promoted his paper with inflated circulation figures. That was to make more money. Business was fierce. Competition was fierce. People did what they had to do to make a lot of money. But this guy, he beat everybody. William Randolph Hearst. He has a huge mansion in California, the Hearst Mansion, and visitors to California go to see this mansion. He started the San Francisco Examiner and the New York Journal. There was a movie. It's considered, we'll talk about it down the road in this course, but the movie is considered the best movie of all time by many people. It's called Citizen Kane. and the movie was based on Mr. Hearst. He relied on sensationalized news dealing with death, dishonor, and disaster, yellow journalism, to boost circulation. He promoted stories that appealed directly to the emotions, and at his death in 1947, he was believed to be worth $200 million at that time. $200 million in 1947, which is equal to about 2.25 billion today. So just imagine that, from selling a piece of newsprint for pennies. It was just unbelievable. And Pulitzer and Hearst had a rivalry. They hated each other. At one time, Pulitzer had the best reporters in New York on his staff, and Hearst decided to offer those reporters more money, and so they came to work for him. That's called poaching. You might have heard of poaching of animals and that sort of thing, but the technology companies in California, they do that to each other. They hear about somebody who's fantastic at a certain kind of technical method, and they will go to that person and say, let's say that person is working at Apple and Google wants to snap him up. He'll say, I'll give you, whatever you're making, what are you making here? I'll give you 25% more or 50% more, whatever. And they just steal them away. One of the most famous legends in journalism involved Hearst. He sent a reporter and photographer to Cuba to cover the rebellion against Spain in 1896. His reporter cabled him to say, "Everything is quiet. There will be no war. I wish to return." Hearst replied, "Please remain. You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war." The purported exchange endured not only as evidence of Hearst's reckless arrogance, but of the effects of the news media. There is no proof this dialogue between Hearst and his reporter ever existed.